He craves you. But why the silence? I was once puzzled too until Keanu Reeves showed me a truth that redefines love and vulnerability. Stick around. What you're about to hear will change your perspective on relationships forever. The difference between men and women is starkly manifested in how they process emotions, especially those overwhelming ones like desire, passion, and love. Women naturally express their true selves, sharing feelings to forge soulful connections, not as a sign of weakness, but as a hidden strength. Meanwhile, men, particularly those bound by standards of competence, success, and control, often find it challenging to open their hearts as freely. When a man genuinely longs for a woman, not merely with a fleeting glance, but with a profound, elemental emotion, something extraordinary occurs. He may not rush toward her or confess every sentiment. Instead, he might choose a path of retreat and silence. This silence, however, is frequently misunderstood by women as neglect or indifference. In many cases, beneath that quiet exterior, a fierce internal battle rages. From an early age, he was taught that emotions are perilous, obstacles to logical thinking, control, and success. Overwhelming feelings threaten to destabilize him, a prospect he dreads deeply. For control is not only essential for managing his emotions, but also serves as a shield protecting his identity and autonomy. After years of carefully constructing a distinct inner world, meticulously compartmentalizing emotions so as not to disrupt ambition, reactions, or responsibilities, suddenly, when a woman ignites intense desires, everything seems to be upended. It is at this moment that he chooses to withdraw into silence, not out of indifference, but to reclaim inner balance and manage his emotions without exposing himself to vulnerability or weakness. Men, especially those defined by intellect, strength, and capability, refuse to accept the feeling of losing control or having their inner world laid bare. They never allow anyone to dictate the realm of their emotions. Consequently, when overwhelming feelings surge forth, he temporarily retreats, manifesting in silence, distance, or even an appearance of indifference. And precisely at that moment, many relationships become precarious, not because he cares any less, but because his silence is easily misinterpreted as apathy. The woman feels abandoned, constantly seeking reassurance and clarity, yet the more she strives for explanation, the further he withdraws. Now, he must not only battle his personal emotions, but also face the pressure of deciphering even those sentiments that remain elusive to himself. There exists another group of men, those inseparably tied to their sense of purpose in life. They measure their worth not by the amount of love given, but by the achievements they attain and the legacy they leave behind. Thus, when encountering a woman capable of awakening something profound within, he is not only drawn to her, but also burdened with responsibility. He wonders if he has the capacity to care for her, to be the man she needs, strong enough to shoulder that responsibility. And when his confidence falters, when he feels inadequate in every conceivable way, his instinct is not to reveal his fear, but to retreat until he finds the right answer. This is precisely why women should understand that a man's silence does not always mirror his inner emotions. Sometimes, it is simply the way he copes with feelings when he lacks the words to express them, a process of self-negotiation to determine whether he is ready or not. Paradoxically, if a woman responds to that silence with feelings of inadequacy, panic, or by pressuring him to respond, she may inadvertently push him further away. Conversely, if she remains composed, confident, and untroubled by his temporary withdrawal, his profound vulnerability only deepens his respect for her, not out of obligation, but because he senses genuine admiration and sincere desire. Men do not wish to be needed only in their moments of despair. They long to have their autonomy celebrated, to feel that approaching you is not born of necessity, but of their own deliberate choice. And when a woman exudes confidence, the insecurity stirred by his silence gradually fades, transforming that quiet into a brief, transitional phase that, when navigated wisely, paves the way for a more sustainable relationship. This is the truth behind why a man who yearns for you might fall silent, not always because of you, but sometimes due to his own inner struggles. Men carry a primordial fear of vulnerability, not as a conscious decision, but as a legacy of their soul accumulated over decades. Society teaches them to be strong, capable, and in control, while any sign of vulnerability threatens those very core values, potentially exposing a weakness that could be exploited or that might shatter everything they have painstakingly built. Consequently, when a man craves a woman, not just physically, but emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually, he feels as though he stands on the edge of an uncharted abyss. His deepest instinct is to shield himself from pain, a pain that encompasses not only the physical, but also the emotional and psychological, capable of unsettling his very identity. In allowing himself to deeply feel for a woman, he no longer remains an isolated entity. Instead, he becomes intertwined with something far greater than his individual self. This prospect, fraught with the risk of loss, rejection, helplessness, and failure, makes many men wary. It is precisely for this reason that they often find it challenging to express their emotions, even when their hearts are ablaze with intense, fervent feelings. From a young age, they were taught that expressing emotions is dangerous, rendering them weak, unmanly, lacking in strength, and out of control. Consequently, rather than allowing feelings to surge forth, they choose to suppress, stifle, and bury them, because fully acknowledging their emotions is tantamount to risking something they are not sure they can handle. Now, imagine what transpires when a man meets a woman who is not merely a fleeting attraction, but someone who ignites something profoundly undeniable within him. He desires her, he craves her, yet simultaneously he resists, not out of indifference, but because he cares too deeply. He understands that if he were to commit fully, he would open himself up to such vulnerability that he might not be ready for its consequences. Therefore, he hesitates, withdraws, and even falls silent, not because he wishes to, but because he simply does not know what else to do. This is the paradox where desire collides with fear. The more he longs, the more he worries about losing his identity amid the passion. The more he yearns for closeness, an inner battle erupts with a warning that intimacy is dangerous. This internal conflict often results in behaviors that leave women perplexed, hesitations, withdrawals, and silence that are easily mistaken for indifference. In truth, it is his way of self-preservation, an effort to reconcile his intense desire with his deep-seated fears. Tragically, most men fail to recognize this fear, refusing to admit that they are afraid of being hurt. Instead, they offer excuses, claiming they are too busy, need more time to think, or simply are not ready for a relationship. They create these rationalizations to avoid confronting the real issue: how to allow themselves to be vulnerable without sacrificing the very core of their identity. A man's fear of vulnerability encompasses not only his emotions, but also the weight of responsibility. When he loves a woman and envisions a shared future, the burden of duty grows heavier on his shoulders. He yearns not only to be by her side, but also to prove that he is worthy, strong, and talented enough to succeed. Even a hint of doubt, a trace of insecurity about whether he is truly fit for that love, manifests in silence, distance, or evasive actions. He chooses to retreat rather than reveal his uncertainties, for deep down he fears disappointing her or becoming a burden. While he grapples with internal battles and challenges in his career, finances, or spirit, closeness could expose the cracks he has fought so hard to conceal. This is why many women feel disillusioned when they sense that a man seems emotionally unready. They ask, if he truly cares, why doesn't he speak up? If he needs me, why doesn't he act? What they may not realize is that for many men, expressing emotions is not the issue. The real difficulty lies in believing they are strong enough to manage them, capable of bearing the weight of love without losing the essence of who they are. Thus, they hesitate, falling into silence, not out of indifference, but because caring always opens the door to the risk of rejection and failure, a risk they have spent a lifetime trying to avoid. Human psychology is a peculiar realm, especially when it comes to relationships. We often assume that if someone truly craves something, they will actively pursue it, daring to chase and claim it as their own. Yet reality doesn't always follow this pattern. Sometimes, the more one desires, the more they inadvertently create distance and resist intimacy. When a man is profoundly attracted to a woman, When he experiences a desire so intense that it leaves him disoriented, his initial instinct might be to withdraw, fall silent, or even establish a barrier, not because he doesn't want her, but because his love for her is so overwhelming that it traps him in a state of uncertainty. This phenomenon is hard to fully comprehend. The instinct to retreat doesn't signify rejection, but rather a subconscious challenge, deeply ingrained in human behavior without any deliberate intent. When a man feels something deeply, something that might unsettle the independence he cherishes, his initial reaction is often not to advance, but to retreat, waiting to see how she will respond. In that moment, everything becomes complicated. If he withdraws and she reacts with panic, pursues him, demands answers, or tries to close the distance he has created, a transformation occurs within him. The natural allure of desire gradually gives way to a sense of pressure, which quickly diminishes his inherent attraction. Men typically cannot endure pressure in relationships. They do not want to feel trapped, confined, or controlled. They long to know that their presence beside her is driven by genuine desire, not by external compulsion. Thus, if he inadvertently creates distance and she responds with desperation or fear, he will come to realize that when equilibrium is lost, the dynamics shift and the magnetism slowly fades away. Conversely, if he steps back while she remains steadfast, living her life confidently without chasing after him, something remarkable happens. He begins to sense the weight of the gap, questions why she does not react as he expected, and discovers that her independence only rekindles his initial attraction. This is the psychological phenomenon where the seemingly unattainable becomes all the more precious. When something demands effort, it is cherished, whereas what comes easily is often undervalued. In relationships, this dynamic is ever present. A man who is truly attracted to a woman does not wish for her to be so desperate as to seek his validation, making her happiness contingent on his every action. True attraction doesn't lie in someone clinging to you or never letting go. It lies in remaining whole and complete, with or without another person. What empowers him, boosts his confidence, and emboldens him to commit is the realization that even though he yearns for you, you remain independent and self-sufficient. You desire him, but you don't need him. Many people misunderstand love, assuming it means constant closeness, never letting go, and always having the other person by your side. But that isn't genuine love. It's dependency, which gradually erodes respect. A lasting relationship is built on granting each other personal space, understanding that attraction flourishes in the absence of pressure, when desire is nurtured by mystery, free choice, and the acknowledgement that the other person is not an extension of you, but an individual with their own life, passions, and identity. If you wish to keep the flame of desire burning, you cannot force or smother it. You must let it breathe, allowing the other person to appreciate the value of life, whether you are there or not. This is exactly what a man is doing, even if he isn't fully aware of it. By creating distance, he feels the weight of his emotions and seeks to reclaim control, testing whether the attraction is strong enough to pull him back without the crutch of obligation. And if a woman realizes that by not panicking or chasing him, but instead by maintaining her own confidence, she has passed an unspoken test, she becomes even more alluring through the strength of her self-respect. It's truly disheartening that so many people measure their worth by how others treat them, constantly seeking external validation to ease their self-doubts and to convince themselves that they deserve love, that they are valuable and desirable. In doing so, they end up sacrificing their most precious asset, self-respect. This is a dangerous psychological trap. When you place your value in someone else's hands, you gradually lose control over your own life, becoming reactive, desperate, and prone to chasing others simply because you believe their attention defines who you are. This is the quickest route to the collapse of both attraction and personal identity. Both men and women can fall into this trap, albeit in different ways. For example, a woman might feel an intense connection to a man, perceiving deep potential and being irresistibly drawn to him. Yet when he withdraws, falls silent, or fails to appear as she had hoped, a question echoes in her heart. What did I do wrong? Am I not good enough? Instead of recognizing that his behavior reflects his own fears, internal battles, and struggles to manage his emotions, she internalizes the issue, believing that if she were better, more attractive, or could prove her worth, he would return and choose her, thereby affirming her true value. But remember, thinking this way is completely misguided. Your worth isn't determined by whether someone texts you or prioritizes you in their life. Your value comes from within, existing independently of external validation. Once you recognize this and refuse to let others dictate your emotions, everything changes. The way you act, how others respond, and most importantly, how you allow yourself to be treated. This is precisely why confidence is so captivating. It reflects self-respect, sending a powerful message that you don't need anyone's permission to be cherished or chosen to feel complete. When you live by that belief, you naturally attract others, not through chasing or striving, but simply by being your authentic self. People aren't drawn to those who rely on others to feel whole. They seek individuals who are complete, strong, free, and passionate about life. That makes you irreplaceable, because when you aren't dependent on anyone, others sense that your presence is a choice, rooted not in fear of loneliness or the need for validation, but in genuine belief in your own value. And that is what forges sustainable and meaningful relationships. If you're ready to uncover the secrets behind lasting relationships and transform into your best self, hit that subscribe button now and join the journey.